Hi BookTube, and welcome to a new video. Now this might sound crazy because I'm going to talk about my TBR pile for 2021, and what are we in September, but there is a logic to this madness which forms the theme of this video. So I was partly sort of struck when I saw Steve Partridge's video on the 10 most sort of BookTube love books that he has no intention of reading. And for some of them, the reason he gave was that because of work commitments, he only really has an hour a day to read. And that rules out really big, thick books because it will just get, you know, it'll take him forever at 1 hour a day to get through them. But the point he made that struck me was that also if he did that, if he committed to doing that, there would be fewer videos from him because he'd be holding up the same book week after week after week. And that struck home with me because I do want to talk about the domination for me next year of big, thick, chunky books. So the first thing to say is that last year I read about 130. I'm on course for similar this year. The year before that I read 102. So that's sort of my average, is somewhere between 100 and 120. Next year I suspect it will be between 40 and 50. Because there's a selection of big, thick tomes that I'm going to show you in this video, several of which I have started at various points, and it's about time I really, bit the bullet and, saw them through to the end. So, for example, 2 years ago, March of the Mammoths, in its inception year, I chose, let me find it, this little book. The Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, 1,000 pages. And in the month of March, we didn't have to necessarily finish our Mammoth books in the month of March, March of the Mammoths. I got up to page 247, and then I broke off because I found I was desperately craving other reading. Because I was a fifth of the way through that book, nearly a quarter of the way through that book. And it took virtually all of March. But I was desperate that other book, I just wasn't reading anything else. I wasn't getting any other sort of literary input, and gradually I ran out of gas and put the book aside, which is a problem, a mental problem I'm going to have to overcome next year by reading so many of these big tomes. This year's March of the Mammoths, again, I wasn't very successful. I wanted to go back to Duck's Newburyport, again 1,000 pages. So in the Christmas holiday period last year I started it and I got to page 200 and I was really enjoying it, but then I did have to put it aside because I had writing commitments and editing commitments from the new year. I picked it up again early on during lockdown when you had the sort of privilege of being able to read in the back garden. I did 100 pages in a week, which at that pace would mean, from start to finish this book would take 10 weeks. Almost a fifth of the year. But again, I even though I thought that was good progress and I was really enjoying the book, I put it down for other reads. It's almost like just between fast food and haute cuisine, I guess, really. But of all the books that I have started, this is the one I'm enjoying the most. So it's absolutely crazy not to finish it. So that was this year's. That was this year's March of the Mammoths. Again, not successfully completed. So I guess, I've got 11 books here, of which those are 2. So I'll be doing 11 March of the Mammoths throughout the year, which is a scary, scary thought. I will be reading other things, just not as many as I'm used to. So, for example, a traditional New Year start is a buddy read with Jason over at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, and this year we'll be doing Virginia Woolf. There'll be a new David Peace book coming out, which I ordered 2 years ago. It got postponed a year because of the COVID crisis. Peace wants to promote it and obviously can't do speaking events in the flesh, so he asked for the book to be put back. So there, and I'm sure there'll be other new titles that I feel I have to read then and there, although not as ravenously. I can't let myself be as sort of, ooh, magpie, shiny thing glittering at me, pick it up, new book. I can't be doing that next year. I haven't got the bandwidth. And there are there's lots of authors that I've read this year for the first time, really liked them, and straight away ordered another one of their books. But on the whole, I tend not to read authors more than once a year. So, for example, this year I read Anne Patchett's Bel Canto, loved it. This is State of Wonder, which I've been told is her best book, so I definitely want to get to that next year. Robert Perisic, this is his follow-up to Our Man in Iraq, which I read this year. This just came out last month, maybe. It's called No Signal Area. I know what Kamel Reed's talked about it on his channel. I can't afford to let this book go unread next year, because I really liked Our Man in Iraq. And this is quite chunky in itself. This is, 400 pages, but it doesn't even rate on the scale of the other ones I'm going to show you. James Baldwin, Another Country. I have had hope to get to it this year. I may still get to it this year, but if I don't, again, like the Perisic, I cannot afford to let it go unread another year. And I like to read a Philip Roth a year. I won't be reading one this year, but next year, Sabat's Theatre. So there are plenty of books that are going to bump up my reading from the 11 mammoth tomes to, as I say, around 40 to 50. But it's going to be, the temptation to pick up the Perisic and putting down, ducks, I've got to fight that. I have to finish these mammoth books that I've singularly failed. I have started most of them. So the next one, James Joyce, Ulysses, which was a read-along for several people this year. And unfortunately, COVID took the air out of our tyres on it. And unfortunately that buddy group probably won't reconvene in that form. We'll probably just individually make decisions when we get back to it. And so for next year I'll be reading this. So I got up to page 281 in my 1,000 page edition. I found it surprisingly easy to read. I've always been really intimidated by the thought of it, actually. It's no more difficult than that. So I think these two are going to be the easiest two for me to get through. Next on the list, The Tunnel, William H. Gass. I started reading this 5 years ago, maybe. I'm on page 144 out of 643. And it's very good, but it's very dense. It is quite slow going. So I don't feel I need to start again. I do remember that, the stuff about 144 pages. So that I definitely want to finish. The next one's quite interesting. It's called La Medusa by Vanessa Place, which is the most polyphonic voiced novel I've ever come across. And I read the first 100 pages of 467, 500, something like that. And I put it down and I haven't gone back to it. I say it's interesting. It's interesting for two reasons. Actually interesting for three reasons. This is the only book that Amazon contacted me saying, did I want to sell my copy? On Marketplace, and since I hadn't read it, finished reading it, I said no. Second of all, I've had it for so long that this area has sort of faded because it was sat on my windowsill and the sun bleached it. It should all be this colour pink, and as you can see, it's sort of pink, faint pink grey, and what it's done to. So I mean, Amazon, if they knew what state it was in, probably wouldn't want it anyway. And the third interesting thing is, I'm currently reading this. This is a book called One, by Blake Butler and Vanessa Place, and it's really interesting. I'm not going to talk about it here and now, but I couldn't place the name Vanessa Place. Ironic, place, the name, place. So I went onto Google and found that she'd written this. It's the same author. So that has only increased my desire to finish this, because she's a very interesting writer, both from what I've read in here and also in One. The next one, Samuel Beckett. This is sort of 3 small novels, so it is a big book because they're all collected in one collection. I finished the first one, Moolloy. I'm halfway through Malone Dies, and then I've got the Unnameable. So this shouldn't be too much of a barrier. So in all, they come to 400 pages, and I'm on page 233, so I'm halfway through. It's worth saying that one of the other reasons for, finally completing these reads, not just for the sort of mental thing of getting through them, getting to the end, but I'm going to be able to reclaim a lot of my bookmarks that are currently stuck in these books. And the last one that I've started is Only Revolution by Mark Danielewski, which is, everyone's read House of Leaves, but has anyone read anything else by him? I know Noah has. Noah's a big fan. I read this, where was I going? Yeah, I was going up to Newcastle for the literary festival. I was on a panel there. And it was, you know, my train was delayed, so I had loads of reading time, and it was really slow going, partly because of the way it's laid out. Every page is like that, which physically slows you up. So I only got 100 pages into this, so it's only, I think, 360 pages. So again, it shouldn't be too daunting, but I do have the experience of actually finding it really slow going. It can't only be the physical sensation of having to turn around. You don't have to turn around every page. It's how you choose your path through the book. That was what I chose, was to read page by page, which meant inverting the book for the right-hand page. So that was my choice, and I'm going to stick with that. I mean, it works for me, but it was slow going. And then we come to some mammoth tomes that I haven't actually started. So Leaf by Leaf is a big William T. Vollmann fan. I've never read anything by William T. Vollmann. This is called The Royal Family, and it's 750 pages long. So, you know, Leaf by Leaf has really sold me on William T. Vollmann, so I need to experience it for myself, see what I think. The next one, I do have a project to read everything by Denis Johnson. Sorry, probably not poems and plays, but all of his prose. I've read a lot of the shorter ones, but this is a chunky one, The Tree of Smoke, and this is 600 pages long. But, you know, Johnson is such a pleasure to read. It's not like trying to read Joyce or you know, something, or, you know, Vollmann. I don't think there's any pyrotechnic, you know, sort of formal pyrotechnics going on with Johnson. He's a very, you know, beautiful language kind of merchant. So, you know, that shouldn't present too many problems, hopefully. The next one, The Recognitions by William Gaddis. I think this clocks in at just under 1,000 pages. Yeah, 950 something. And I think it's all written in dialogue. Again, a polyphonic like La Medusa. But I'm very keen to read this and then to get onto JR, which is the other massive tome in dialogue. I've read his shorter books. But I think of all of these books, this is the one I'm most intrigued by, really. I think it's set in the world of art forgery. And finally, Red or Dead by David Peace. This is 715 pages. So David Peace's book, The Damned United, was about an English professional football manager. This is about another one from a different team. These are very famous managers, but these are Peace's fictional treatment of them, and basically about their obsessional natures, which propel them to the top. I do have have I ever read a bad book by David Peace? Yeah, I've only read one bad book by David Peace. He's an extraordinary writer, and I really like his work. I'm slightly worried that this is going to retread same ground, or at least same technique, as The Damned United. And it's twice the size of The Damned United, which is interesting. I wonder what more is packed into this. So there you have it. You know, quite a daunting set of reads, really. And I really have to overcome this thing of, you know, of being desperate to read other books, which you can do in parallel. But it seems when I put these mammoth books down, I never pick them up again. That's what I have to overcome. It's not slotting in a sort of slightly smaller read. That I can do, but what I've got to make sure is that I'm reading in parallel with one of these books. I haven't really thought of an order. Noah and I have just had a very brief exchange on Voxer, and he's expressed interest in doing a buddy read of The Recognitions by William Gaddis, which I'm totally up for. So, you know, the experience of the Joyce, this year's buddies or read along, was it really helped make it easier. So, you know, I don't know if anyone else is interested in buddy reading. The ones I haven't started, it's probably not worth buddy reading ones I've already started and made headway through. But, you know, Denis Johnson, Tree of Smoke, William T. Vollmann, The Royal Family, David Peace, Red or Dead. If anyone's interested in buddy reading them, I'd be more than up for it, because I think it might also help ease the challenge that these mammoth tones present. So that's, you know, my 2021 TBR and goals and aims, which is crazy, but there you go. I do have a couple of other big tomes that, you know, if I do somehow knock these off quicker than expected, which I don't think will happen, but if it does, I've got all of Alistair Gray's short stories, which again is about 1,000 pages. I have started that. The one issue I have with that is I'm really not into short stories right now, so that's a little less appealing. And the other is Middle Sea by William Gass, I think. But obviously I've got his book The Tunnel, so it's unlikely that I'll read 2 Gass books in the same year. Now, the Middle Sea is not as thick as The Tunnel. I think Middle Sea is about 500 pages. So, yeah, there you go. I'd be very interested in any of your comments about any of these books, or, you know, the concept of mammoth books. How, you know, if you did March of the Mammoths, how did you find that? It's definitely a different mental state from reading a book, you know, say the size. I mean, this Roth is chunky. This Roth is 440 pages, and yet, you know, double the size. And in my mental makeup, it does something. It does change the rules of the game somehow. So yeah, I'd be really interested in any comments you have. And if you think I'm crazy for establishing and fixing to some extent my TBR 4 or 5 months ahead of time, feel free to let me know. Okay, thanks. Till next time.